Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where, yes, we're taking a look at that Jurassic Park 2-pack. Now this 2-pack includes, obviously, two different figures. Hi. And this 2-pack includes two different figures, because of course, 2-pack. And that is the really terribly named Tyrannocon Rex. Obvious name is obvious, I guess. And possibly the worst name I've ever heard for a Transformers figure. And that is Autobot JP93. I understand why they called it that, but it's still terrible. Okay, so getting right into it. Tyrannocon Rex is Kingdom Megatron, but repainted and with a new head sculpt. And Autobot JP93 is a new mold that kind of feels like they blew up an extremely basic deluxe to try and make it feel like a Voyager. Now, I'll get into this probably at the end with the final thoughts and all that, but this set doesn't really feel like it's worth the $100 to me. Granted, the packaging is fancy, and here's a quick picture of it. It's not the best, but it's the only one I've got, so you can see what I'm talking about. And it's cute. I thought it was neat packaging, and of course there is the licensing, but like, that's a big ask for what this is. I don't necessarily regret the purchase, but I do wish that they had put a little bit more effort into it. So to start talking about these, I'm just gonna go straight to the point, because I imagine most people are interested in Autobot JP93, because this is the new mold. So we'll put Tyrannocon Rex off to the side for now. We will come back to her. It is designed to look like one of those SUV-type cars from the first movie that travels along the track, and it pulls off the look. But all of the effort went into this mode. Like there's, again, we'll see when we get to the robot mode, but this is, this does look good for what it is. And it does do a pretty decent job of not looking like it transforms. There are some seam lines in a few places, but overall it masks them pretty well. It does look good. It's some really nice temp grafting all around for the different stripes for that kind of pattern that it had. There's the yellow strip going along the bottom all the way around, and it's also yellow on the tires. They definitely did not do a great job of getting even spray with this paint. Like you can see it's pretty solid here, and then it just kind of fades out here. Kind of the same deal here. It's a little bit more universally faded along the top there. Like you can see basically looking at how solid this yellow is versus how faded this is. They absolutely dropped the ball on the paint on the sides here, and that stinks. And there's also the tampographin that they've got on the doors with the Jurassic Park logo and the actual logo, and you can see that it is not lined up too well on this side. It's like Jurassic Park. It's just not applied super great. And considering these are packaged in alt modes, I feel like that probably should have been lined up better. I don't know. Maybe that's not how they apply them, but on this side it's better because the P and the arc are separated, and it like because of the fact that it follows that pattern of the larger first letter in the word from like Jurassic and then Park. The fact that it may not necessarily be aligned as well, it doesn't stand out as much if it's misaligned. So it just kind of stinks that they lined it up that way, and that is obviously off. But there is, I will say, a fair amount of detailing. It's not great, as I've said. Some of it is lacking in a few places, but, they've got the tail lights, and they even painted the black detailing around the tail lights. They did not paint the side mirrors, but they did paint a little, I guess that's supposed to be like a floodlight or something on the front there. And they also did paint a lot of the details in the front of the car with the headlights and the blinkers and the grille and all that. And then this piece, I'm pretty sure this is a separate piece of plastic, this black kind of cage thing over the bumper, over the front, but the actual grille lines have been painted in black. So there is a lot of detail that is painted and tampographed and such on JP93's Alt Mode, which is great. It is a disappointment that they didn't do such a great job in certain places, namely, as I said, the tampographin of the Jurassic Park words and logo on the side and the yellow striping along the side, basically just around the doors. My apologies for people who don't want to hear that kind of stuff, especially for me, because I don't normally talk about that, but I can't help it. I am a little bit ticked off that they're charging over $100 for this 2-pack, and the $30 Voyager figure has lackluster paint quality and detailing in a couple of spots. I feel like, considering the fact that they're basically charging at least $10 to $15 more per figure than would be normal, you'd think they'd do a little bit better of a job with it. They didn't. Anyway, one other thing to go over with JP93 here is the weapon storage. And yes, it actually has weapon storage. I'm extremely excited about that. As you can see, there is a robotic-y, shotgun-y thing on the underside. I believe this is meant to look like the shotguns from the Jurassic Park movie, maybe. Regardless, it does store under the vehicle, which is great. I love it when weapons do that. There's just this little tab sitting right there, and there is a slot on the side of the gun, so you just line them up, push it in, and it stays on the underside. You can, if you want, put the gun on top of the vehicle. And you can, if you want, put the gun on top of the vehicle. It doesn't really look that great or accurate in the movie, but you can do it. There are these little slots on the top here, right behind this kind of giant display sunroof thing. And what you do is there's this kind of tab thing on the top of the shotgun. You spin that around, and this just slots into one of those, and now you can do that. But yeah, I think this is better served. Hi. This is better served underneath the car, where it's just kind of out of sight, out of mind. So that is JP93 in all of his slightly disappointing glory. So let us move on to... Hi, honey. Don't knock over my backdrop, please. Let's move on to Tyrannocon Rex, rather. And Tyrannocon Rex is, as I said, Kingdom Megatron. It is the same exact figure. The only difference being she is painted to look like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. There are a couple things about Tyrannocon Rex that I feel like they kind of dropped the ball on. First off, there's no JP brand on the Dino mode, which, I mean, I don't know for sure that that is something that they had in the movie itself, but I know they had that JP brand on all the dinosaur toys when the original Jurassic Park toys came out. And I kind of feel like that would have been a fun nod. The other thing that's kind of weird to me is the way they decided to do this really dark, almost black coloring around the eyes. I don't really think that's accurate. Like, looking at this thing head on, that's just... It makes her look incredibly tired, which, I mean, same. But it's just a little too pronounced, you know? Like, you've got these stripes going along the back that are more of like a dark brown on a slightly lighter brown, and I think if they had stuck with that color instead of this, because this does look just to be straight up black, and it does kind of fade out to a darker brown, but I feel like if they had done the darker brown instead of the black, it would have probably worked a little better. Because those yellow eyes pop pretty hard, you don't need to have the contrast bumped up so much right around the eyes. It also kind of gives her a skull look with the black. Maybe that was intentional, I don't know. All of that being said, the overall paint that they did on Tyrannocon Rex is really, really nice. I don't have Kingdom Megatron to do a comparison with anymore, but they did a really great job with the overall paint. There's lots of fading between colors, like you've got on the underside a much lighter kind of beige color that fades into the brown, that then fades into the darker brown, that then also goes into this darker brown for the stripes. There's the fact that they painted the mouth extremely well, where you've got kind of a pinkish color for the gums, pinkish color for the tongue, white for the teeth, the pinkish color for the little webbing bits, and there's a lot of really, really nice coloring and detailing and color separation in Dino mode. I just wish that they'd not put that. Another thing I really like about Tyrannocon Rex over Kingdom Megatron is the fact that a lot of her joints are a much more understandable color. Like, her knees are a very, it's black, but it's not really black. It's hard to tell. It's a really, really, really dark brown. And that works so much better than the almost bright white that Kingdom Megatron's joints were in the legs. So like now, if you bend the knees, yeah, it still breaks up the sculpt, but this color works a lot better with what's going on here than that extremely bright color that was on Kingdom Megatron. And you also do get a little bit of red showing through in a few places, but again, I think that is, it's not as contrasty I didn't get any of these figures for their alt modes, but this is a pretty darn good T-Rex, and I will say Kingdom Megatron as a mold is pretty decent. It didn't blow my socks off like Kingdom Cyclonus did, because that is like one of the most amazing Transformers Voyagers to come out in several years, but it's pretty darn good for what it is. Anyway, Articulation. The Kingdom Megatron mold, and by extension Tyrannocon Rex, has pretty decent articulation for what it is in Dino mode. So you've got the mouth, the head can go up and down, and the mouth can open to a kind of absurd degree. I don't like opening it this far because it breaks up this bit up here, so I tend to, if I'm going to open it that much so that it still looks like that sinew is connected, but you can open it up a lot more than that. You get that up and down there. You can also rotate the head and lift that up if you want. You can also pitch it forward if you want to do that. And then there are these flaps around the neck that are interesting in that they're designed to kind of move out of the way to give you extra range on the head. It does break things up from certain angles, but it's kind of a cool thing that they were thinking of. It definitely looks better when the head is more in like a stationary or just very slightly turned position though. For the tiny T-Rex arms, which actually do have two fingers because that's how it's supposed to be, they are on ball joints just at the shoulder so they can rotate around and kind of move in and out in a few places, and can't quite move that far, but for what this figure is, for the, the mold is meant to be, I think that's fine. What is really impressive to me, though, is the fact that these legs can move because of how the transformation works. And I know lots of people have talked about this, but there's this track on the inside of the thigh. I lift this up. You can see there's this track in here that this piece moves along. And this is the robot mode hip. So with this piece down, you can actually rotate the hip, and this piece will move with it, shifting along that track. And that is really cool. You do also get a little bit of in and out. It does start to break things up a bit, but if you really wanted to, you could pull this out more and do that. Wouldn't recommend it, but you can do that. There is a pseudo thigh swivel just above the knee, and then an actual knee that bends pretty decently. And then the feet actually have a decent amount of articulation too, so they can go down and up, and also side to side a bit. But it's not over yet because there is still the tail, and the tail can move a fair bit at the base and at the tip. So you can get some pretty decent curvature going on the spine and tail in the T-Rex mode, and that's pretty cool. It's definitely one of the most well-articulated transforming T-Rex toys I know of. There might be more out there, but it's pretty darn good for what it is. So, let's bring JP93 back in so we can do some quick size comparisons. Here's everyone with the standard deluxe squad, and Tyrannocon Rex, as you can imagine, is, it's T-Rex, it's Kingdom Megatron size, it's pretty decent size for a leader. And JP93 is roughly-ish standard deluxe size, a little bit smaller, but also a little bit taller, so it's kind of, yeah. We'll see more of it when we get to robot mode, but JP93 is not a proper Voyager. To finish things off so we can get to the good stuff, here they are with the duck tank. Alright, so as I said before, I feel like everyone's mostly interested in JP93 because that's the new mold, so let's get Tyrannocon Rex out of the way. We will do the fast-forward transformation with her in a little bit, but JP93 can actually walk through the steps with this one because this is the new mold. So, first off, I'm going to take that gun off and put that off to the side. Next, you want to pop open the doors, and you kind of want to pull down slightly because there's a little tab right up here that sits just behind the windows. So you kind of pull down and out, and there you can see the little tab I'm talking about. So pull that down and out, take the doors open. Then under here, there are the arms. You just want to pull those up and swing them out and point those up. So they just kind of, they come up to a point and then stop because of the geometry, so then you just want to rotate them out to give them clearance, and then bring them up. While we're here, might as well get the hands folded out, so just want to rotate this up, and these will actually click into place. So just rotate it up until the hand clicks in place, and now the arms are ready. So from here we need to get this section disconnected from back here, and the best way to do that I've found is to just start bending stuff. So by bending this down, it'll kind of, these bits will kind of pull this up and out for you, and it'll cause this to pop out on its own. And once that's popped out, you can move that out of the way further. Also, as you bring this down, this little door will open on its own and make room for the robot mode head. But we're not going to bring that down just yet. So we're just going to get this out of the way, and now we're going to fold the legs around. So this whole chunk just folds down and around and straightens out, and split the legs, and splitting the legs will cause this section here, this little bit right on top, to pop out on its own, because that's just how it works. Or at least that happens to me every time I do it. So you pop the legs apart, and these will separate. And with these separated out, you can pull these out and flip them around. And these are a little bit, they're not scary, but they do concern me, because this is all translucent plastic. You can see it's this like kind of smoky colored plastic that just has the burgundy paint on top. So this whole thing is clear plastic, and it swings around. It kind of stops here, but that's actually not where it's supposed to stop. There's this little kind of lip here and this little bit sticking out here. You want to bring this in and push it so that it kind of clicks in place just past that little tab that's sticking out. And I hate doing that. I don't see any signs of stress or cracking yet, and it's a very small tab, but I still hate doing it because it's all clear plastic. That's not great. But anyway, that's it for the legs. So legs are done. Now for the upper body, I want to rotate this whole chunk of wheel and arm will actually rotate around and kind of click itself into place with the wheel pointing up now. And there's just enough clearance, you can see as this comes around, that it swings right past the brim of that hat. So I do have to give him credit for the design in that it's got just enough room to swing past that head. And then you swing this down, and this kind of tab sticking off of this strut here will sort of settle into this notch up here. So when you bring this down, it'll, like, it doesn't click into place, but it does friction into place pretty solidly. Bring the arms down, bring this flap back in, and that will just settle back where it was. And then this bit on the back, there's a kind of a tab sticking out here that will slide into this slot sticking out of the back. So just line that up, push that in, and that will hold that in place. And there we've got Autobot's JP93 in his robot mode, and we will talk more about this in a bit. But for now, we've got to work on Tyrannocon Rex. And if you're familiar with Kingdom Megatron, then this will not be a surprise. Okay, stopping the speeding up for a second just to go over this. Flipping these bits in is a little harrowing, and you want to be really careful because this whole figure is covered in like a soft plastic skin, and that includes these flaps here. So when you fold these around, and they do flip around like this side did, you want to be very careful to make sure that none of these corners get hung up on anything as they're going through. So you might need to kind of push things past other things just to make sure nothing gets caught. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it is doable. And yeah, that cleans all that up. And now there we've got Tyrannocon Rex in her robot mode. So here we've got the two of them together in their robot modes, and I think it works out pretty well. I kind of wonder if they went with red and black for Tyrannocon Rex's color scheme because red is complementary to green, and obviously JP93 was going to be green because that's the color of that vehicle that they chose. Maybe, I don't know. Either way, I think they look pretty good together, but you can kind of see, and we'll see more details in a bit, but you can kind of see what I was talking about in terms of they didn't really put any effort into the detailing of the robot modes. There's a little bit of paint on Tyrannocon Rex other than the head, but there is nothing on JP93 except for the head. All of the newly exposed robot bits on JP93 and most of the newly exposed robot bits on Tyrannocon Rex are just plastic. I do think JP93 is a fun mold, I just don't think he's worth the $35 to $40 that he probably comes out to when you try and divide things up in this 2-pack. So, yeah, let's just stick with tradition and move Tyrannocon Rex off to the side and just talk about JP93 to start off with. And I think the overall proportions, aside from the head being a little tiny, I think the proportions are pretty decent. Wears his alt mode pretty well. I don't mind the fact that he doesn't really have toes. I think this is fine. He's a robot, whatever. It does make his legs a little chunky below the knee, but that doesn't bother me too much. The backpack kind of tucks away pretty nicely. It's a decent amount of car that's just there, and this transformation is really basic. It just makes me think like they could have done a little more with it, but overall, you know, he cleans up nice. I don't mind the door wings. It's kind of a classic look. The door wings and the hood chest is like very Autobot. The colors, I don't mind the colors. I just wish they had done more with the newly exposed robot bits. Like, there's no paint at all on these legs. No paint at all in the midsection, no paint at all on the arms. It's a real missed opportunity and a real disappointment. But again, I don't dislike this figure, it's just, is all of our money going towards the licensing with this 2-pack? I think it might be. Now for the head, it is it's basically a robot version of the guy who is basically the game warden in Jurassic Park, that being Robert Muldoon. I said this on the Discord, I feel like it would have been a much better name for this guy. Instead of Autobot JP93, which is terrible, call him Robot Muldoon. But nope, it's not what they went with because, I don't know, maybe the executives at whatever company owns the rights to Jurassic Park these days insisted on that nonsense, who knows. But getting back to the head, you do get some of that green along the back and sides that does tie it into the rest of the green, which is fine, but I do like that they bothered to separate the face out in gray, and I believe, it's hard to tell, but I believe they painted the eyes black, which gives him kind of like a sunglasses look, which works for me. And of course he has his kind of game hunter hat, which I'm pretty sure they did the triangle shape to facilitate that transformation, but it does kind of give him a little bit of a Bloodborne hunter vibe, but in khaki. It's a decent looking robot, it's just there's no paint in the robot bits aside from the head, and that's really lame. But there is some nice molded details all over the place, and like these wheel well bits that are exposed now because they're flipped inside out. Kind of a hollow torso, but when you're looking at him from the front, this kind of goes up just to where the hood chest comes down, so it's not immediately noticeable from most angles unless you start looking at him from slightly up, or from slightly below, rather. Got some nice detailing on the legs, and the inner thighs are hollow, but there's some detailing in there as well as some detailing on the insides of the calves. And yeah, there is detailing, it's just he really could have done with some more paint in the robot bits. So with all of that griping out of the way, let's talk about the articulation. So the head is on a ball joint, but it doesn't really afford any side-to-side motion. Barely affords any up and down motion either, which is disappointing, but you do get the rotation, as we saw. The arms can swing out 90, they can go all the way up. Got a ball joint at the elbow, so that gets you the kind of faux bicep swivel and a little bit over a 90-degree bend, so that's pretty good. The wrists do not rotate, but they can fold in if you want them to. You just have to unclick them. There is no waist swivel, which I don't know, I feel like they probably could have worked it in there somewhere, because this bit, it's attached up here, so like they probably could have put something down there, and again, like it wouldn't bother me as much if I didn't feel like they marked this guy up way more than they should have and didn't really do much to justify it. But anyway, the legs can go forward that far and go back that far, so pretty decent range. Can go out pretty far that way. You get a thigh swivel at the very obvious cut. And then you do get knees. It's a single jointed knee, but it can bend pretty much all the way in because of the transformation. Problem is you end up with this kind of nubbin sticking out of the front because of how that's just a cross section of the back of the car. So that's a little awkward. If nothing else, maybe if they had painted this top section here in black so that when it's straight, it doesn't have this like weird green bit sticking out. So many little things about this figure that I'm like, what were they thinking? Or were they? And lastly, there is a pretty decent ankle tilt on this guy, actually. You can bend that all the way in like that, and there's even this little extra bit of plastic here that's revealed to kind of hide some of the gap. Just wish they had put that kind of thought into other stuff, but hey. Now, one thing I do want to mention before I finish up the articulation with JP93 is this guy's joints, despite the fact that this is a new mold, his joints were a fair bit loose when I got him out of the box. Like his hips and his elbows in particular were loopy. So I had to go in and do the floor polish trick, which you can check out up there if you haven't tried it yet. Not a huge problem, but it kind of sucks that this new mold for this special overpriced 2-pack has loose joints right out of the box. It hasn't been around long enough to suffer mold degradation. What's going on? Anyway, here's gun go in hand, and there we go. So now JP93 has his shotgun, which is the exact same color of unpainted plastic as his entire arm. So there's that. Should have done something. In terms of storage for the shotgun, I don't think there is any in robot mode. There might be something that I'm missing, but the tab that it pegs into is on the back of his calf, so if you wanted to use that, then you'd have a shotgun just kind of sticking off his leg, and it won't even work because of this bit sticking out here. Yeah, I can't really find anything else to use for storage. The only thing I could think of is if you slip this down here, it just kind of, you can just kind of balance in there and then fall out immediately. So yeah, not really much in the way of storage for the shotgun. So we'll just put the disappointingly undetailed piece of plastic in his disappointingly undetailed plastic arms. I know I'm down on JP93 a lot, and I think a lot of it is deserved, but I do like the figure. It's just, for the cost, this is kind of a joke. Anyway, let's get him off to the side and bring Tyrannocon Rex back in here. And she is Kingdom Megatron, and again, lots of really nice paint and detailing on the Dino bits, or the Alt Mode bits, as we saw with JP93, but robot mode, you don't really get anything. There's a little bit of paint in the pelvis and the chest, and that's just to make it red, basically. And then you've got the new head, and that's it. And I just wish they had done a little bit more, like a little bit of detail in the thighs, maybe a little bit of extra detail in the chest, like have these vents in black instead of just straight red. Just something, you know? Make us think our money's going towards something a little more worthwhile. I will say, I do think that the colors here look pretty nice. Black goes with anything, the red works out pretty well. I don't think anything particularly clashes with the Dino bits. It's just, you know, there's a lot of nice detail here that is just kind of lost. Like, looking at the thighs, there's a lot of nice molded detail in the thighs that it's harder to see because it's matte black plastic. And in the waist section, there is also some molded details, and also I've got this kind of weird paint divot thing that was like that when I took this figure out of the box, so yay. Then also there's the nice detail in the chest, which also seems to have a little bit of thing right there, so cool. Moving on to look at that head sculpt for Tyrannocon Rex. I do like the head sculpt. It kind of looks a little bit reminiscent of Grimlock in a way, where it's like that angry visor and the no face really, but it's like very harshly angular in a lot of places, which I think actually looks pretty cool. And the straight black head with the bright red visor I think does stick out pretty nicely, but I feel like this would work a little bit better if it wasn't this massive sea of red with a little bit of black right below it. But the molding is nice. I do like the molding. I do have an issue with mine though, and you might have seen it, where like sometimes I'll move the head and it just kind of, it wants to lean back. Like the head wants to be like this. Something's going on either with the joint or with the ball, but this head, it's like it's super loose when it's leaned back like this. Like, look at that crap. That's ridiculous. But then it tightens up when I move it up, but it still kind of is inclined to lean backwards, in particular when it's looking forward. And that's, again, not great for a figure that is costing probably around 50 or 60 bucks. Since we're already here, let's go over articulation. So the head is on a ball joint, and you do not get any side-to-side motion at all. But you can look up a lot, and things get really floppy. You can't look down, really. You can try, but then it wants to spring back up. But you do get some side-to-side motion. The arms are on swivels, so they can swivel around. You don't get it on this arm, you get it on this arm. So you get a little bit of a butterfly motion there. And you've got bicep swivels on both arms. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the transformation and the fact that this is not the masterpiece figure that's really, really expensive, you have to do the bicep curler orientation if you want to get an elbow bending like this. And that's not ideal, but at least it's just one arm that does that. And it's not actually a fist, so it kind of works in the sense that you can just kind of pretend that maybe this is the proper orientation. Or if you wanted to, you could rotate it this way and pretend that's the right way. I don't know. And of course, you can open the jaw a lot. And there's a little port thing in there for a blast effect if you wanted to do that. For the other arm, this tail piece is attached to the forearm, so that's not going anywhere, but you can get slightly... Nope, that's 90 degrees. So 90 degree bend at the elbow. You also got that bicep swivel, and then the wrist can do this. And if you wanted to, you can move this bit to have it act like a grabby claw. Oh, and you also get in and out motion on the arms, and the in and out motion on this arm is not tight enough to support the weight of that dino tail, so yeah, we're gonna have to tighten that up. This one's fine, this'll hold it up, though it doesn't go up very far. I do think it's cool though that with everything going on with this figure, you do get a waist swivel. That's pretty neat. And it's banging into these bits hanging off the back here, but you can, if you wanted to, rotate them up, and it kind of gets them out of the way so they're not hanging down here, so it kind of cleans up the silhouette a little bit, but it also has them sticking way out on the back, so it's kind of a toss-up. But with them up like that, you can rotate the waist all the way around with no problems. The hips can go forward that far and back that far with these bits out of the way, and they can go out about that far. If we unpeg this and rotate it back down to the dyno mode orientation, then you get way more out. From the knee down, it's the same exact articulation as the dyno mode, where you've got that roughly 90 degree knee bend, you've got the swivel above the knee, and then the ankles do the same forward and backward and tilt. So here they are with the standard deluxe squad, and as you can see, or maybe you can't from the angle, but Spinister is actually a little bit taller than JP93 at the head. As I've said before, I don't think height is a big indicator of class at this point. I think it's more about the complexity of engineering, and yeah, his engineering is not indicative of a Voyager. He's got some like super basic deluxe engineering, all things considered. There is some clever stuff in there, but it's not complicated, it's not complex. It's just very simple when compared to like a Voyager class figure. And here they are with the duck tank. Okay, I'm done. I've ranted and railed way too long about these two, in particular JP93, and I feel bad because I try not to be super negative in these videos. I try not to sugarcoat things. Like, I don't want to lie and be like, oh, I love this figure when I don't, because I don't do that. That's what would be the point of that. But I don't like being so aggressively negative, I guess. But I'm just so disappointed with how little effort they put into the robot modes themselves, in particular the decos for the robot modes. Tyrannocon Rex, don't like the name, but the color scheme's good, the paint's nice for what had, Dino mode that has the paint. I love the new head. Could use more detailing. It's just JP93 is so... But I've reiterated that so many times at this point, so I'm just going to stop talking about that. So that has been my look at the Jurassic Park crossover 2-pack of Autobot JP93 and Tyrannocon Rex. I still think Robot Muldoon would have been a much better name for this guy. What do you all think of this set? And by this set, I mean the 2-pack, either or both of the figures involved, the Kingdom Megatron mold in general. I'd be interested to see what they do with JP93's mold, but I don't know if they actually will do anything with it, because they didn't do anything with the Top Gun Maverick figure. But regardless, whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like any of the videos I put out and feel like supporting the channel, there is a Patreon, which you can find a link for in the description, or there will be a link at the end card. It's just a $1 tier, but that $1 does support the channel and will also get you early access to videos and some behind-the-scenes posts every now and then. With all that out of the way, thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art does move in herds.